In this presentation, we will review the changes that will be made to the status codes that are used in the office visit screen or the S-Jellybean screen. Why the change? Having staff complete paper-based cycle times has been problematic. However, having cycle time data can be very helpful in reviewing how our clinics are doing. We hope that these changes will allow us to have a system in place so that we can do paperless cycle times, also have a uniform status code system so we can compare cycle times across clinics. How are we going to do this? Our first step will be to update the status codes in ECW to make these codes unified across all clinics. We also have the goal of turning on these new status codes by June 30th so that by August 1st we can start running cycle time reports from ECW. Here are a few points to keep in mind regarding these changes. The new status codes are up for debate and change. This is the first step of several to develop concise codes. What we are starting out with is not the finished product. After trying out the new status codes, if there are any issues, please report these to your clinic manager. They will be reporting back as a group as to if there are codes that need to be changed or added. Once again, these changes are not permanent and are up for edit and revision. Your clinic manager should have already given you a packet that contains a list of the new codes and their definitions. Let's look at a basic and uncomplicated office visit using these codes. Normal workflow. When the nursing staff brings back a patient to the exam room, the status needs to be changed to Nurse In. Here's an example of how it'll look in the office visit screen. After the nursing staff is finished with the patient, they will change the status code to Ready. Here's how that would look in the office visit screen. When the provider enters the room, they should change the status code to Provider. Once the provider is finished and no other services are needed, the provider can change the status code to Done since the visit is completed. Patient is then sent to checkout at the front desk.
Now let's look at a possible workflow for provider visit that had the patient going to the lab after seeing the provider. A Spanish patient is brought back into a room, at which point the nurse will change the status code in the office visit screen to Nurse In. Here is how this would look in the office visit screen. Once nursing staff is done with their workflow, they will change status code to Ready Translator. This lets the provider know that the patient is ready and that they will need a translator. The provider enters the room and changes the status code to Provider. If the patient needs lab work, the provider would change the status to Lab Ready. Once the patient is taken to the lab, the staff will change the status to In Lab. If the provider needs to see the patient once more after labs, once the patient is done with labs, the nursing staff takes the patient back to the exam room and changes the status to Ready Translator. Once the patient is finished with their visit, either after having lab work or seeing the provider again after having labs, the status code will be changed to Done and the patient can check out. This concludes our presentation. There will be a short training review at your clinic before the live date of June 30th. During the session, there will be time for questions. Thanks for your time.